game, or massively multiplayer online game that you would see. The next iteration would be Magic for Hire, and for that video game, the rule books, the guidebooks, whatever you thought, throw it out the window. Because by this point, the players, who have been playing these previous games, and the designers, they're basically, by that point, you're gonna know exactly how to make things work, and what sort of areas, players. Because remember, this whole process is that the players are gonna have interaction with the game makers themselves. You're gonna be, literally creating the content of the game and the entertainment in a continual, expansion. So the company would hopefully, conceivably, be, incorporating players, especially skilled players and talented, game coders and artists and you name it, into the creation of the games. So when you finally get to the point of Magic, Magic for Hire, the result is that the players can would hopefully have those background knowledge about all the previous things, and they could just do whatever they want, because they would not be hindered by anything. And so you can have players decide, well, I'm going to go technology, and another player can decide, well, I'm going to go with Magic. And in the case of Magic, that is kind of the interesting, unique factor that what would happen. I think was the same with hit points. You would then have like 100 Magic points. So the question is then for the Magic skills, like, well, how efficient are you using the Magic, and how good are you with Magic skill? So like, will it require 1 Magic point or 10, kind of thing, to cause it, and so what sort of effect do you want that Magic to have? So that maybe, like I said, these are all skills that you can decide on, so that you have the major Magic skill set or the major skill branch of Magic, and then out of that comes out like, well, how efficient are you at using Magic? How efficient, and how efficient do you want the Magic to be when you use it, kind of thing, so. Just all sorts of things, but branching out, and whatever the player decides and wants to do. And you'll see players just going nuts, and you could conceivably imagine a low-key guy who's just running around, and next thing, but you don't realize that, well, this player's actually keeping him, has made himself stay alive for, generations and generations. His character, his avatar has never died. He's just kept low-key, and he has amassed a massive amount of experience and power, and then the next thing you know, bam, this guy just does whatever kind of spells, and he all of a sudden has he's conquered a piece of land overnight. Nobody has expected it, and he's established a community. He's raised an army of whatever sort they can get either by recruiting mercenaries, telling people he secretly worked and allied himself with, saying like, okay, it's time, let's go, or even like raising an army of undead, or an army of constructs of various sorts, and cast a spell so there's a magic shield over this piece of land, and it would be shocking to players, and it would be a kind of chagrin. But the thing is, well, you already have that. You already see that in games where like, oh, you die, now you have to trek this distance to go retrieve your body. So if a player spent all his time making this civilization, this organization of this either economic power or physical land nation, and then the next thing you know, some guy has decided, well, I'm going to take half of that land from you, and it would upset the player, but at the same time, it's that's the beauty of the game, that's the joy of the game, that you can do that if you want. Nothing's set in stone. The alliances, the locations, and the topography of the land is whatever the player wants it to be, any player. And it's just a question like, well, how can the players work together? So, you'll have people who are upset and people who are like, okay, so I was doing all right, now this guy has really thrown a wrench in my work, so now I have to overcome this other player. And the idea is that, the idea for all of these games is, the GM is not going to get in the way of the players interacting with each other. Let the players go nuts if they want to, and step on each other's toes. So be it. That's part of the thrill, the joy, the excitement. And it's going to be understood by that point that yes, playing this game, I can decide whatever I want to do, and I can, if I want to be a jerk to other people, so be it. Which is, any society and community you're going to see. I really think that, ultimately that would be the big draw for this game. It will keep a hardcore base of players, and would also be regularly attracting new players, because they would get fed up with, other games that say, oh, you have to be this class or that class, the good and the bad, you have to learn all this different stuff. For my games, no. From the get-go, it's, you create something, that's what it is. Otherwise, you're just another average, Joe or Jill roaming around, doing whatever you want. If you step in for an hour a week, you can, join a little group that, we just deliver stuff. And that's what you do. You just run around and deliver stuff. Talk to people, and you can do whatever. Or you can say, like, oh, I want to go kill things. Okay, you can step in for an hour, and, you can either roam the forest, or, be part of a mercenary group, or part of an assassin group, or even just be, a lone rogue, and just, whatever. If you see something you want, you go and take it. Nothing is going to restrain you except yourself. Ultimately, from all this chaos, you'll see order develop. New players who want to do whatever, or old players who want to buck the system, yeah, they can do that. They can go nuts and disrupt other players' lives. The GMs may step in to hinder, in various ways, the player, but otherwise, who's being a disruption. But otherwise, it's up to the other players to decide, what are we going to do about this guy? And this guy has, been robbing my little piece of land here, or the section of my land, for a period of time, and he's really becoming a nuisance. So I'm going, all right, I will decide to take this guy out, and so that's what the player will decide. And you have to, the player, will lay the various traps and figure out the, different ways they can do things. And the key advantage for everybody is, or the advantage that everybody has, is that they can disembody themselves and look around. So the whole, like, well, what's over that horizon? What am I not being, what am I not aware of? Which is, you could almost say it is a disadvantage, but at the same time, I think it's an advantage, because any player can do that, regardless of where you're at. The limiting factor for the magic floating eyeball is you can't enter into buildings that a physical body could not enter into. So I think that would be, one neat thing. And even then, there's only so much you can do. Because it would have to get to the point of, like, you can't enter this building unless you're actually sneaking in. You purposely broke into the building. So that's something to think about. But otherwise, no, you have to have a grate. You have to have a lock and a grate, and so, you have to physically go to that building, sneak, up to that grate, pick the lock, and then you can, enter in and scout around and do whatever. Ultimately, I think that's, like I said, that's the draw of the game. As much as players want, they can, enter in, screw around, and just have no limits. But you have to start with sword for hire, and just to set up the basis, set up the groundwork for how the game's going to work out, how the people are going to be able to interact, and work out maybe some little nuts and bolts. But really, no balance. There is no balance. If you want to become a badass player, you can do so. If you want to have a skill that's just totally maxed, or just like, astronomical in number, so be it. Nothing will hold you back. So that's the kind of game I would like to play. That's why I'm sharing this game idea with the world. And I'm hoping a video game company will, stumble upon these videos and be like, hey, we like this idea. We'll go for it. And call me up and say, hey, Sky, we'll pay you money to help us make this, video game. Which ultimately I would love to do. I would love to work with a video game company and help them create something amazing. And if they got other games that they need help with, hey, free of charge. I'll float my ideas and, tell people what I think. Because ultimately, hey, why not? What's wrong with, sharing your ideas and encouraging, entertainment and enjoyment for others to have? So that's my thing.